Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the show. I'm really excited for this one. Today we have talent attraction and an employer brand manager, and he's also a board member of the Talent Brand Alliance. Alex Herr, how you doing today, man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm excited to talk to you, man. I found you on LinkedIn, and you seem like someone who I definitely needed to connect with and who would definitely have a lot of good stuff to talk about. For everybody out there who's interested in kind of creating that brand within their company, showcasing culture, showcasing the unique things you have going on within your business, and putting that stuff out to the world to show what you do best and hopefully attract people to come work there in the end. So how'd you get into this stuff, man? I'm curious, like, what path led you to where you're at now?
Well, thanks. I was gonna say when you were saying that you messaged me on LinkedIn, I'm like, I was hoping when I got your message, okay, you weren't trying to sell me a life insurance or some product that just didn't make sense, because that seems to be the norm now. But
I'm with you there, man. I get those all the time.
yeah, it's interesting how things change. But yeah, I got into employer branding by accident. I had no plans to get into it. I'm pretty sure other people who you've spoken to or who you will speak to will say the same thing. But I was just working at a digital marketing agency and decided, okay, I probably reached the ceiling of what I could do there. I applied for a contract position at the time was DealerTrack. Later, I would learn this is part of a greater organization or group of companies called Cox Automotive / Cox Enterprises. So then I took a chance there to go work, and it was basically take everything you've learned from my previous IT experience, customer service, as well as digital marketing, and sink or swim. Honestly, it was let's try not to get fired. let's just let's learn from my my teammates that I had there from some in Austin, but mainly in Atlanta and Vermont, and I took that from there, and then Informatica, acoustic, and here I am talking to you.
Yeah. It's interesting, too. I'm curious what your story is here, because I have to imagine when you kind of got into this, like, employer brand wasn't really a thing. It's not like, somebody put out a listing that was like, we're hiring for an employer brand manager. You know what I mean? So, like,
yeah,
what did that look like? How did you kind of make that name for yourself and kind of find that area?
Yeah. So it's good you mentioned that, because the job postings at the time were like digital marketing manager or SEM specialist. So I took it based off of that. But in terms of like making a name for myself or just really spreading the good word of employer branding, it was okay. Once I got in, all right, so we're doing marketing, but we're marketing to job seekers, right? Not something you really hear, I heard of before. It was more of, okay, we're going to market a product or a company. That was what I was taught. So once I figured, okay, hey, it's job seekers, job descriptions, career pages, social channels, reputation sites. All right, so how do I look at that? And for me, the best way was, okay, when I was a job seeker wanting to move from Michigan to Austin, I looked at, okay, what attracted me, right? What made it super exciting, like the sexy pick to me? And once I could put that side by side, it's like, okay, basically I always need to keep the job seeker in mind and always be a job seeker at heart. So I took that approach and just, picked the brains of many recruiters, many awesome recruiters. I also had the opportunity to work with I would say at the time, one of the only full-blown employer branding and recruitment marketing teams at Cox. So I picked their brains and learned how to basically take what it was to work as a team of 10 and take that as a team of 1 to my other jobs. So just doing that and just constantly learning from other great people, such as James Ellis, who was recently on your show, John Graham, Brian Cheney. Gosh, there's other people, Crystal Miller-Lay. Like I know I'm name dropping quite a bit of people here, but there's a lot of great people. I'm sure I'm missing most of them, so sorry in advance. Or Holland McHugh, who is working with me at Cox, but just learning from them. It's like, and then eventually, over the years, I think it's been about 5 or 6 years. Things have changed, right? It's not just a digital marketing manager. Now you can say, I'm an employer brand manager. I mean, honestly, it doesn't make the conversation any easier, because when you tell people, if you know, they don't know. It's, like that line they say, if you know, then you know, right? And there's very few people who do. Most people, it's easier to say, hey, I do. Like, I don't want to say social media because we just kind of work, but I'll just say, I work in recruitment. Let's make it easy. Because if I don't, it's a 20-minute conversation. and I know that person's not going to remember much of anything I'm telling them.
That's interesting, though, and I feel like a lot of people probably have to make that transition from marketing products to marketing an experience, a place, a life that they're potentially going to step into. And I'm curious for you and your personal experience, like, what was the biggest change from going from marketing a product, marketing a service, to marketing employer, a brand?
It was different. So I was on the agency side of the house, so it was more of, okay, you're working with this client and their specific needs, so it would change, right? It would be, okay, you're focused on maybe they have a social media plan, a display ad plan, and then different industries. So with that, it was based on that. There wasn't a personal connection, honestly. Like, you worked more directly with their account manager or their account executive, and that was it. So you weren't really tied into your work. But then jumping into the employer branding space, it was, okay, you know what? You're about this brand. You are, if you're working for, like, let's say a Netflix or a Google, like, you were that person. You had to be the top ambassador, and it stood for something. So if you could, if you could carry that mantle and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I would say a good example is, like, recently in the MCU, Captain America died. There's got to be someone who's got to pick up that shield and say, hey, I'm going to take this here and I'm going to do something with it. I'll be the next Captain America. Take care of the Avengers and call that good and move on. And, like, you've got to be that person when it comes to a brand. Like, you've got to be the top person from a attraction, a recruitment perspective to say, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to lead this brand. This is what I'm about, and I'm going to make it successful.
Yeah, I mean, the implications for accepting that seem huge, right? Like, you have to understand so much about, like, every little facet about the business. It's so much different from, like, product. You can just understand the product, and you don't have to understand, like, the inner workings of every particular different department within a company and how they work together. And I feel like stepping into the employer brand space, it's so much more important to understand, like, okay, here's what the development team does, here's what the product team does, here's sales, and you have to understand all of that stuff to be able to communicate that effectively.
Agreed.
It's a bigger challenge than, I think, just like, okay, here's the product. So that's interesting. I think it's a interesting transition.
Yeah, it is, because you're the ultimate project manager. Like, you are a comms person, you're a PR person, you're a social digital person. You also need to know how to source and recruit. And then you have to be, you got to be, like, I would say, a peace negotiator, because, if everything worked well, right, we want to have these ongoing blogs or, podcast conversations where we talk about maybe the struggles we go through as EB and RM specialists. But, like, you have to mend fences or bring everybody together. And that's the fun part of the job. But, hey, if you can't do that along with everything I just mentioned, probably not the job for you to be in then.
Get out now before you're in too deep.
This is true.
So I know you have a pretty extensive background in focusing on content marketing. And I know a lot of the work you have done now in your new role and also in the past has been rolling out these content marketing initiatives. So I just want to kind of focus on that area with you and see if we can dive into and reveal some helpful stuff for people out there who are interested in content marketing. How do we do it? How do we implement that kind of stuff? But first, I just kind of want to establish what it is. Like, how do you even define content marketing for yourself? And why content marketing in the first place? Obviously, there's a bunch of different initiatives you can choose when you're like, okay, we're going to invest in marketing, but where? So, what's content marketing and why is it such an effective way to market?
Yeah, so content marketing to me is, it's pretty much a form of marketing that's focused on creating and publishing content that's targeting a specific or particular audience. And to me, that's pretty key. I mean, for whatever industry you're in, I think it's key. But for me in employer branding, that's where I can get those stories out there, right? Because if you're just simply worried about posting on job boards or putting these job ads out there, you're probably capturing a very small portion of that, but that's more recruitment marketing. You're not getting the employer branding / content marketing, which is key. Storytelling is at the heart of what we do, because if not, why have us there, right? It's my job to do that, but It's important to do that because you're getting these stories out there. You're sharing different perspectives, to each their own in terms of the company and your approach in terms of what you do. But at the heart of what employer branding is, you want to make your company an attractive place to be. And content marketing gives you one of the best options, many options with that specifically to tell that story.
I like that answer. And I think to me, when I think about content marketing, it's like for the people that commit to it and the people that do it right, you can't fake it. You know what I mean? You can't fake content marketing where you can make an ad and convince people for 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever of anything. But a content marketing initiative, it just demands dedication to it. There's no way you're going to put out consistent content for 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it is, on a consistent basis and commit to that and lie the whole time,
I love how you mentioned that. That's you don't hear a lot of people talk about that specifically, but it's easy to put an ad out there, right? Whether it be an audio ad or a display ad, and say, "Hey, we're hiring," or whatever it may be. It's like, well, what else are you doing? Share that story with us. It doesn't have to be specifically with what I'm doing. If you're focused on a product and that product has or supplies something or helps to fix a real life challenge, well, tell that story then. Make it relatable to people, because when you could see that journey or that story is being told to us as consumers or job seekers, it makes a difference. But if I see this nice ad there, it's like, okay, it's there. I know you want me to click here maybe to lower my mortgage, right? Because mortgage rates are low, or there's this amazing job there that I might have interest in. That's okay, but I'm looking for more out of that.
Yeah, and I think especially when you're trying to sell somebody on a place to work, it's a major life decision, right? And I've had the experience myself of being sold one thing, you get in there, the rug gets pulled out from under you. This isn't what I was sold, So to me, it's like that the truth behind what you're marketing is so important. And when it comes to attracting people and keeping a good reputation for having good culture and having a place that isn't just saying that it's a good place to work, I don't know. To me, it's just like, here, we'll show you with our actions instead of saying it with words and trying to get it to a million people. I think to me that's, when I see somebody who's committed to content marketing, I don't have to listen to the words. I can see the action. I can see the commitment. I can see the dedication that they have to whatever it is they're, talking about. So I don't know. I think it's a powerful thing. And to me, I also think like it's not easy. It's hard, right? Like it's hard to do. It's hard to make that commitment and to live up to it, So I don't know if you have any thoughts based on that, but that's just kind of, something I thought about recently. It's
true, because I like how you mentioned someone can say they're a great place to work, right? It's like, well, what makes you a great place? Because if we win so let's say, for example, at Acoustic, if we win an award, great. That tells you we're a great place based off of whatever organization has rated us that way. But I want to be more intentional, especially with the way that we do our employer branding and recruitment marketing, and let you know, hey, this is why we're a great place for a specific set of workers. I want to be intentional. Like, the plan is like, yeah, I want all the talented people to come work for us, but there is a specific set of people, because you said like your example where you go to a place, the rugs pull from underneath you. I'd rather be honest up front and say, hey, we're looking for people who want to be in a hard-working startup atmosphere, no silos, no nothing in between. And when you see an ad that says, or an article that says, great place to work, that's great, but what else is there? And I want to be more about sharing everything up front and telling you that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're going to avoid you're going to hit those bumps down the road anyways, So if you lie to get them in the door, sure, you may be filling more positions successfully and faster or whatever, but you're going to have a culture problem, you're going to have a turnover problem, whatever. So I agree. I think
Definitely.
That's so much more important. So I know you've implemented employer brand specifically in terms of content marketing in the past. So tell me just about some experiences you've had, some times that you have been tasked with maybe coming up with strategy, rolling out a content marketing initiative, and some of the struggles, some of the lessons learned just in your time dealing with this.
Yeah, definitely. So, I will say three occasions here. One was starting at Informatica. I had left Cox, and with Cox we had the machine built out. Like you saw how everything was, how it should be. Tons of smart people, and you go from a team of 10 and 10,000 employees to one person across 27 countries, 5,000 employees, and hey, you know what? We needed this done yesterday. So it's making friends fast, selling them, like being the top salesperson, and then figuring out, hey, what's going on, like joining these different internal groups. Even like I was based in Austin, so I was joining their Great Place to Work committee, starting up a group in Dublin, like making myself there but not there, right? Connecting as much as possible, and then just trying to figure out what stories were there. So that was one. Two was one of the toughest times to create stories was when we were in the early days of the pandemic, and we weren't hiring. If anything, we were just trying to keep people there, decide what we're going to do, like many other companies. And when it's like that, it's like, well, what do we do, right? So in terms of content marketing, it's go back and let's see what our people were talking about. Let's see what our actual products were doing, and then what our internal comms people were talking about too, because I think the biggest thing that people forget is, okay, yeah, whatever your content marketing may be, your internal comms people have a lot of great stories to share. Like if they're on your intranet, they're on your Slack's channel, your Teams channel, or Yammer if you use that, it's there, it's waiting. I mean, it's there for the taking. So it was looking there and determining, okay, we can't talk about hiring because we're not hiring. We can't attract people, because we just don't have the jobs open. But what can we share that we're doing? And it was finding these great things that people were doing. And in Dublin, they did probably like an X Factor, Irish/American Idol. They did that. We had someone actually using our products to help a county in California learn more about their COVID cases. And then also just virtual running contests that we were doing in APJ. So finding that and then putting that all together in one article that is out there. I'm not just providing lip service here. It's actually out there on my LinkedIn, putting it out there and saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're not hiring, but this is what we're doing. This is great content that I had to really go hard out to find, and here we are showcasing it back to you. And that at the time, that's what we were about in Informatica. And then the third piece here at Acoustic, it's and I'm still working on that. It's okay. Here you got this new company here. It's a new company. It's an old company / startup, part of IBM or was part of IBM. And what stories can you find there? And it's just connecting with different individuals. But I would say there's always hard work that goes into the content marketing. If it was that easy, more of us would be doing it, and they wouldn't need people like me.
I love that story about going into the internal comms and kind of pulling some stories out of there, because I think a lot of people probably start to think about employer branding and the immediate thought is like, okay, let's create stuff that fills this specific role, that attracts people to this specific job that we're trying to fill. And it might not be as obvious that there are other things that have nothing to do with filling an exact position, but more just in general, here's the lifestyle, here's the culture, here's the team, even, with COVID, like everyone understands the world's in a crazy situation. Like, here's how we're dealing with this. Here's how we're getting around that. I think there's opportunities in that kind of situation to showcase who you guys are, who the culture is and stuff like that. And I think it's less obvious, in those situations. So I love that story. I love that you shared that, because I think that could be, for anyone in your position right now who's like, I need stories, I need content to put out there, that's a great example of a way to create some content. I really like that. And then another thing you said was, talking about how content marketing's hard, right? If everyone, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And to me, true. I think that, that's an even better reason to do it, right? It's an even better reason to, like, a great content marketing strategy, a great implementation of content marketing is very hard. Therefore, there's a lot of opportunity there, right?
True.
Because If it was easy, everyone would do it, but it's hard. So not everyone's doing it. Therefore, you can become a leader in your space, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're basically out there looking for so not in a negative tone like a news reporter, but I mean, you are looking for news, right? And that's your content, and it's hard to do, but it's hard, but it's I enjoy the journey of finding that story, and the reward at the end where it's like, hey, this person did this amazing thing. You're just providing them a platform, an opportunity to showcase that out there. And I think it works wonder, and it's not self-serving for me, right? Not self-serving for the person, but it just does. I mean, there's a multitude of benefits. Like I can't pinpoint it down to one thing or the other, but it just I like the process behind it all.
It's interesting. It's fun, right? It's fun to be, like I was saying, it's a really cool place to say like, hey, we're going to commit to this. We're going to, like content marketing doesn't have a very obvious ROI, right? It's hard to immediately go to leadership and say, hey, we're going to invest in content marketing. We're going to roll this out. We're going to, take resources and take time and take effort, maybe advertising dollars if we try to push some of it out there. Like it's going to cost us money for sure. And we'll see what it does, like it's a program that takes a while to show and to start to return some of that value. Right. But, to me, because of that, it seems like it's an even better opportunity to plant your flag in the ground and say, we're going to commit to this. Right. And we're going to go further than anyone else in our industry and anyone else in our field at putting this effort into our content. And the reward that you get for that is crazy, right? Because nobody else is going to do that. You're crazy to put that much work into it without immediate results, right? Without like, well, here's a spreadsheet, here's a report that says we made $20 million this month on our content marketing initiative. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think? Have you had difficulty selling people on this idea of investing into content marketing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, and honestly, because there can be paid options, right? There's always for a free option, there's a paid option. But my approach is, I'm always working on a budget. In most cases, you're coming in, and what you're selling, a lot of people are suspicious of. So there takes a lot of convincing. Very much to your point, where it's like it's not going to happen tomorrow. Like if it did, you don't need me here. However, it's going to happen in time. But so there's not an expense in terms of money, right? If anything, it's time that you put into to create that content, to tell those stories. And I think that, you're going to see savings along the way and just different pieces or different things that will help you out in terms of your employer brand and just in terms of, recruiting, because when you're wasting quite a bit of time to create these stories for the content marketing. However, you can leverage that on several different platforms. I mean, you can push that back on LinkedIn, use that on your main channel, your career page. It's something your recruiters can use for their outreach messages on LinkedIn, Hire Tool, Stack Overflow, whatever they're using. You can drop it on your career page, your job description. You can even plug all that into if you still have like workers coming inside the office, or if there's a factory type of atmosphere, you could put them inside of a one-sheeter. If I could talk clearly today, but. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, right? It's the hard work that goes into creating it, but once you have that, you can push that across many platforms. And I think if you are paying a little bit of money, it's going to pay off in the long run. If you're doing it for free, free always works well for your C-level people, and they'll love that. They'll see the benefit automatically from there. And once people start talking, and they're referencing these stories, like that's the thing you can't quantify that, right? But once people are talking, they're interested in what you're selling or what you're talking about or what you're writing about, I would say, then I think you're on the right track then.
To me, I kind of feel like a broken record right now, but it's like because it's so hard to show, results on a revenue sheet. It's one of the reasons people won't invest in it, right? And by invest, I mean time or money, right? So to me, it's just another reason why it's a good area to focus on, because it's like obviously right now competition is as high as it's ever been, probably, right? In
Yes.
In every market, it's easy to start a business. It's easy to kind of do that stuff. So it's like, what can people do to stand out, be different, get attention, and keep attention? I think that's one of the things about content marketing for me that's so interesting is like, it's not a commitment to like, we're going to make an ad, we're going to put it out there and run it and it'll have a lifespan. Like content marketing is forever, right? I mean,
yeah,
theoretically it's like, no, we're going to continue putting stuff out there. So, you never know where, if you're putting that in the lens of employer branding, you never know when that guy over there is going to be looking for his next job. You never know when this gal is, maybe had a rough couple months and is like, man, I hate this place, but I keep seeing this content from, XYZ or whatever. So I think it's just an interesting opportunity to me. But have you seen those kind of scenarios play out where the snowball effect over time has worked, and you could, like, you actually got a result based on a situation that was like, oh my gosh, see, like this is working, this is worth it. Do you have any examples of that for people?
I do. So I would say two key things for me. After I left Informatica, I put a lot of hard work into that. And just a few days ago, I'm looking and I'm seeing like some of the old content I created or the different strategies that I provided them with, and it's being used. I'm like, wow, it wasn't there, on day one, but then, I've been gone for 3 months. It took like 3 years to create that stuff, but to see it there, it's like, that's amazing. It did have an impact. But in terms of that effect, with seeing actually somebody look at the article or the content and say, you know what, it sounds like a good place to work. I'm gonna go and join them. Can't name the position or the person exactly, but in talking to them before I left, they're like, oh man, we're sad to see you go, because actually your content that I saw created directly from you is why I even applied to join Informatica and why I accepted the offer. So that was, you can't put that in your analytics or an Excel sheet. It's like, hey man, I'm gonna keep that right here and just call it good. So
like, that's a big deal, man. Like, I think when you're coming from that real place and you're telling real stories, you have a chance to actually impact people, I think, on a deeper level. So I think that's cool, man. Obviously, that felt good for you to be like, yes, this worked. Something I want to talk about, and this is kind of more specific to the employer brand side of content marketing, but you're dealing with people, right? You're dealing with trying to sell a company. So in your experience, like, what have you learned? How do you approach these projects? How do you kind of pick the stories, pick the topics, pick the emotion that you're trying to portray? Like, what have you learned about, I'm making this content for an audience and this is what they want. This is what they like. This is content that actually stirs some sort of reaction in these people. Like, what have you learned in that area that you still apply today and like think about ahead of starting a project?
Well, I think the thing that I've learned, from day one and that I still do to now, it's you got to go into any company or any project listening. If you're going in there thinking, okay, I'm going to tell you what we're going to share, I'm not going to listen to what you're saying, I'm going to put stuff out there because it's always worked this way, probably the dumbest thing you can do. Because if you just listen to the people, your internal stakeholders who you're going to be working with the project or your full-time position, they're going to tell you things. I mean, there's tons of amazing stories that they can tell you. So that, in combination of working with your internal talent acquisition teams and hiring managers to learn, okay, hey, these are the stories. This is what I'm being told by my now teammates. This is what you're telling me what the hiring need is, how we historically have struggled, who we want to attract. You combine that together, take those stories, go after that target audience, create the content, and there you go. But I mean, there may be some try and test it true type of approaches that work, and I'm not saying to get rid of those, but I just think the biggest thing is listening and take each situation for what it is, and actually listen to the people you're working with, because you'll find out a whole bunch there versus you just deciding that you know what's best and that's it.
So how do you personally identify what's a story worth telling, and what's not? Like, How do you find those? If someone's within their company trying to do this, like you're saying, how do they determine this is good, this is worth putting out there, this is worth the time, and it's not?
So what I always do is when I join a company, I'm trying to join any of the committees that they have. If it's an ambassador committee, a steering committee, I want to connect with the D&I person, connect with any and every of the hiring managers, connect with C-level people. And also, if there are any, even like if you have like all hands or all employee type of meeting, stuff that people are saying in those meetings will help out. Like I found, the last two stops that I've been at, tons of different stories simply from just not taking those as, okay, this is a meeting, I'm going to mute this meeting and call it good. Listening to what the leadership and then your other teammates are talking about. And you never know, you could have a person who could have been a boomerang, who got acknowledged for doing something. Or maybe it's a sales kickoff meeting and someone, got promoted. That's a story there. You could talk about the promotions that are happening maybe on the BDR side, or people who are just killing it on, like, let's say North America with their quotas. And, they're like the sales champion of the quarter of the year. That's a story. Whether you want to tell that or not, or whether your leadership allows you to do that, that's up to you. But you can tell that story there. Or if people are talking about different initiatives like International Women's Month, Black History Month, Asian American Month, stories that relate to that, that's a story there too. Whether you want to listen and share that, it's up to the practitioner on their own. But I'm always looking and listening for those things. Obviously, within the right confines and getting permission from my teammates. But I think those are they're golden nuggets just waiting there, for you to do something with them.
Yeah, I love that approach. Almost thinking of yourself as like the journalist inside, working inside of this place, and you're just trying to uncover the stories. So obviously, networking and being cool and plugged in with all the different teams and with all the different people is super important. And I love that idea. It's just they're all there, they're all happening, and you just gotta ask or look for them.
Oh yeah, I agree, because in most cases when you jump into employer branding, you're a team of one. You're expected to make magic happen with the team size of 5 or 6 people or more. And if you're just sitting there waiting for them to share stories with you, you're probably going to be unemployed pretty quickly.
You got if you're branding, you got to brand, right?
Exactly.
So have you seen any situations? So because employer brand is becoming this like popular thing, I hear it talked about a lot. People are using it as a buzzword and stuff. I think a lot of people are flocking to it, right? So have you seen a situation where somebody wants to start an employer brand initiative, but you realize like, well, you have some internal issues you need to work on first. Your culture is not great. Like, you might want to address a few things before you start to jump the gun and start to focus on employer branding. Is that a thing you've run into before?
Yeah, I think that happens quite a bit. And I think when you're young in your journey, you're going to take what you have, right? And put a Band-Aid on that, call it good, and say, hey, that's your employer brand. But, I don't want to, negate the fact that your employer brand, once you start posting jobs, that's your employer brand. If anything, once you're jumping into a company, you're going to help update it, remodel it, whatever you want to call it. But, if I deal with anybody who is saying, hey, we're about this, we're about efficiency, pushing pedal to the metal. I know enough now with my experience to say, hey, let's slow down here, because you're telling me this. Your people, from what I see on your rating sites, your social media, and also with interviewing your people, we're not here. We're there. Let's have a pulse check there. Let's be really honest with ourselves and address that before we push out an employer value proposition, tagline, boilerplates, all those good items. We need to be honest with ourselves, identify who we truly are, where we want to be, where we want to be going, and then we can go from there. But yeah, I'm never one to say, hey, you know what, if you say this is good, these 3 lines, let's call it good. No, you're going to, like situations like the pandemic, you will get destroyed right away. People they'll see right through it easily.
Yeah, the people looking for jobs right now grew up on Reddit, so look out.
Yep. Oh, yeah. They're not just looking on Glassdoor. I think that is a big misconception, right? People think, okay, if they see the ratings there, it's bad, they're moving on. It's like, yeah, I'm very much into all my platforms where if I see a 2-star rating, it's like, okay, that's great, but let me dive deeper. And there's other avenues like Reddit to look at that and say, all right, what's the story here? I'm sure there's more to it than this little rating that I see on Glassdoor.
Something you just said a minute ago struck me, and I think it is worthy of reiterating.
Sure.
It's interesting because I had never thought about this until right now, but whether you have chosen to focus on your employer brand or not, you have one, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
If you're posting job openings, if you're interviewing people for roles, you have an employer brand, whether you know it or not, because that interview process, those people talk,
Agreed.
those job postings, that Glassdoor, those reviews, all that stuff. If you're not actively working on your employer brand, then that is your employer brand, right? That's, you just brought that up, and I think that's an amazing point that people need to realize. Like, you either can let the world decide what your employer brand is, or you can have an initiative to say, like, we're going to take control of this, work on what we need to work on, look at ourselves in the mirror really hard and say, like, okay, here's where we're falling short. Here's where we need to improve. But I think that's such an amazing point you brought up. That's like, you got an employer brand, whether you choose to or not. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and I'm not taking credit for that line. I heard, I'm pretty sure I heard an amazing professional mention that about a year ago. And it's true, because I think we all get in the habit of saying, hey, I rebuilt this. Like, maybe you rebuilt it, but you didn't build it from the ground up. It's easy for us to get lost in saying that because, when we get there, there's not a person there before. But, like we mentioned earlier, and you just said, it's already there. Whether you do something about it or not, that's up to you and the company.
Yeah, I think we can often get kind of lost in these buzzwords and lost in the like terminology of things, where it's like, it's pretty obvious that you have a reputation. I guess we could just call it your, the reputation of your company as an employer. It's the same thing, right? Whether you call it employer brand or not. But yeah, that's a super good point, and I hope that resonates with people as much as it did with me, because that's a big point, and something to like really sit down and think about.
Well, I mean, if they need a real life example, I mean, we all have credit scores. Whether you want to do something about your credit score or not, it's up to you. If you do the right things, hey, you look better, you get more credit card offers, people won't give you a high interest rate. But if you say, screw it, I don't care about it, you're not going to get those things that, that are really going to help you out. You get high ratings, not get access to the premier cards. And, if you want to somehow take that back there, related to employer brand, but it's like, it's still your reputation.
All right. So this podcast, this conversation, I like to kind of think about the future too. We are where we are today, but I'm curious for you and your experience, like, where do you see the future of this employer branding stuff going? Like, what initiatives do you think will start to become popular? What are you starting to see people focus on? And like, for the next 5-10 years, what are kind of going to be the emerging things here when it comes to, I want to stand out as a great place for people to come work. We're an awesome place for talented individuals to come prosper, thrive, grow. Like, where, who do you think are going to be the leaders here, and what do you think they're going to be focused on, that's different from everybody else?
So you mentioned one thing that I know has been a hot topic, and it's been being a great place to work. So for employer brands, it's honestly, it's no longer being a great place, right? Because there can't be a place to work if everyone's working remote. A lot of companies have committed to not being in the office or having a hybrid model. So if anything, you need to have great work environment, because you can't tie it back to physical place. Aside from that, transparency. I know transparency and authenticity is, they're definitely buzzwords in the EB space and TA as well. But you're going to need to be honest. Like, people are past the point where they're looking for, hey, they know they'll get the pay, they'll know they'll get the remote work and benefits. What else are you offering them? Like, how is them joining your company going to help the company move forward? Are they going to make an impact? Or are they just going to be another, Joe Schmo who's going to be a chameleon hiding in the background? Because I would say now, like, most job seekers want more. They want more out of that. And in terms of wanting more, D&I is going to be another thing that's going to be highly infused in your EB. Now, you may be lucky to have I would say there's a few unicorns in the space who they're great at EB and they know their D&I. I'm not that person. I'm still learning every day. Even though I come from a biracial background, specifically being an Asian American, it's like I think I know some things, but I have a lot to learn, and I pick the brains of many other talented folks. But D&I and EB together is going to be a strong thing because, as we saw with just a lot of the stuff recently and last year, like you can't just have your EB talk about jobs, and it's like, well, there's a lot of injustice happening out there, and your goal is still, hey, come join us, we're a great place to work. It's like, well, what are you doing for the Pride community, Black Americans, Asian Americans? You've got to address that. And if you're not, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And I think it's, important to talk about because obviously there's probably, I don't know, a ton of people scared to touch that with a 10-foot pole, I mean,
Yep, I agree.
It's such a difficult and complex issue, series of issues. It's not even just one thing, so I think for a lot of people it's easier to just be like, quietly in my closed room, I support all this stuff, but I don't know how to lead in this area. I don't know how to tell these stories,
Agreed.
And I think you're right, man. That's going to be such a big movement in the next, I mean, it already is, right? I mean, you already have any company that has more than 20 people has somebody focused on that, on that role, on that position. So yeah. What do you think people are going to do? I mean, how do you think people who don't necessarily know what to say, obviously you can hire somebody who is part of it, that might make more sense to lead these conversations, but like, how do you become part of that and accept it when you're just scared to make a mistake,
I think the biggest thing is it's okay to admit you don't know, because if you're, what's bothered me the most is you had a lot of companies come out and say, hey, we're going to donate $10 million to local businesses of the, either Black or Asian businesses, and then, or we're going to do this, or that. It's like, okay, you're donating something, that's a tax write-off. What are you going to do to fix something? And if you just say, hey, you know what, we didn't realize that was an issue, but we are going to fix this, or we do realize it's an issue, we have stayed quiet for the longest time, and we're going to work with the right people to fix that. I mean, change only happens when you admit your faults.
Right.
So I would say if more companies do that, then great. But like you mentioned earlier, I mean, people are going to run away from it. But I'd say now versus when I was growing up, or when I was going to college and first started working, like back then that was unheard of, right? It was things you talked about. You talked about in the office, but it didn't. Leadership didn't care about it, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. But now it's up front and center. People are being vocal about it. I know I am extremely vocal about rights for Pride members, Asian Americans, Black Americans, and there's more people like me. I'm one of millions, but I just think many you don't know everything. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's good advice, because it's totally okay to be like, hey, we're gonna make a commitment to be a part of this, to implement change within our business, within our internal community. But like, you can raise your hand and be like, but we don't know how to. Who wants to help us? Because I would be in that situation. It's like, I want to. I care about those things a lot, and I think it's important to do those things. And to me, it's really important, like you were saying, to actually be doing something about it, as opposed to being like, well, this would be great for driving in talent, so like we need to roll out this initiative and all this stuff. I think like similar as we were talking to content marketing, it's like it needs to come from a genuine place of wanting to make the change, and not a marketing scheme.
Yeah, I agree. It can't be something where you're like, well, you know what, this might play well for this group here. We might come across as a company that does care about diversity. Like, we don't, but externally, like for marketing purposes, well, let's put let's put an Asian person here, a Black person, Latino. It's like, no, that's not gonna. I mean, that may attract people in, right? You may have a call to action. The image or video may look amazing, and then once they join the company, or once they're going through the interview process, they realize, wow, this company is not about this. So,
yeah, I guess it's just like anything. It'll shake out in the end, But
true.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, I think that the future definitely is going in that direction, as it should, as it's needed to for a long time.
I agree.
But yeah, I think that's, if people are kind of trying to get ahead of the curve and think about this kind of stuff, like obviously looking for those stories within your company, looking, like we were saying earlier, looking to showcase those stories and tell those stories is really important. And just handing someone a microphone to tell their story is proof, right? That,
Yeah.
we care about this person. We believe in this person enough to say, like, tell your story and we'll stand behind it, whatever it is,
Agreed.
And if anyone has great stories to tell, it's the people that have not had the chance to have the mic and, tell their stories because no one's been listening. So I think, that's well said. I hope that resonates and that people actually do kind of put effort into that area for sure.
Yeah, very true.
So anything else over the years of kind of working in this area that stands out, like anything that you feel is important to discuss, important conversation to start when it comes to, keeping talent, attracting talent, culture, engaging your talent that you do have, any of that kind of stuff?
So, we always focus on the employer brand side. At least it's the thought is out there that it's all external. But I think the thing that everyone misses is your employer brand starts inside too. Because you don't just want to attract new talent, you want to retain the talent that you have. Because if you retain the talent that you have, it's much easier to attract on the outside. Because if you have good people who are working there, if you and I work at, let's say, we'll say Starbucks, since I just had that for lunch. And if you worked at Starbucks and we're like, hey, we're being treated well, we're likely to refer somebody. But if Starbucks is only concerned about showcasing that they're paying X amount an hour for part-time workers, and they don't care about you and I, we have one foot out the door. We have no real motivation to stay there. But I would say it's that, and also there's before someone goes to Glassdoor, why don't you and this is to all employers, in those exit interviews, actually give them the chance to tell you why they're really leaving, because at that point they have nothing to lose. But if you ask them and they know that's okay, you're not just gonna write this on record or type this on record and file it away, never look at it again. If you're actually going to listen to them, take some action, that person might be a boomerang. Or they might be able to say, hey, you know what? Hey, it didn't work out for me here, but I'm glad that Dylan listened to me. And now, the entire team that left behind is still there because Dylan listened to me. My hiring manager fixed that. And it's a better place now. You're working wonders in so many different ways, like for that team, for your employer brand, for the company as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great idea too, because what better way, to say, okay, we're going to step into this world of employer brand. What better way to test it out, see what works, roll out some things, test it, than doing it internally, right? I mean,
agree.
If you have an idea, like James was talking about in our conversation, his idea of like do one thing. If you're going to do one thing, pilot it internally, right? Like, doesn't that seem like a good idea to test things out, figure out what works, what people respond to, and just kind of hone that craft of finding the right stories to tell, seeing what people resonate with. And then once you get your feet under yourself and figure out what you're doing, then expand it out, Those same stories are going to work externally as well, So I think that's such a good piece of advice, Alex, and I think, such a good place to start for people. And I'm not surprised to hear you say you think it's overlooked because, employees are overlooked, right? It's like, here's our product, they're already in the door, they're here, they're stuck, we don't need to do anything for them to keep them happy or go the extra mile, right? But
true.
But you do.
Yeah, you do, and you should. Very much to your point. It's like, yeah, they feel like, okay, they're here. We don't need to care about these people, but you should. I think it matters.
In any job situation, I would have loved for something like that. Even something simple like a newsletter or whatever, just like to hear what's going on with people And, I've had that experience myself in the past where, especially when you're a part of operations and you're honestly part of any team, you're so focused on your goals and your objectives and your team that you work with regularly. A lot of times I had no idea what was going on the business in general, And I think we all want a little piece of that, You put so much time and energy into the place you work. It would be nice to feel like, hey, just a heads up, guys. Like, here's what's going on, Here's what's going on with this team and this team. I know you guys don't get the chance to work together, hang out or whatever very often, and then you've got stuff to talk about. And, I think it's such a big step towards culture, towards making it feel like, oh, this is a cohesive thing. And especially now with COVID going on, who knows what the heck's you're not even, it almost doesn't even feel like a company, right? It's just like you feel like a freelancer or something, It's like I have no idea what those other people are doing.
Yeah, and to your point, it's like I think you need to amplify that even more. Like if you felt like, okay, we should care about our people. Right now, like people do feel like they're freelancers, contractors, because they're not in that office environment. So you need to bring that environment to them. And there's a lot of ways to do that, but yeah, I think you need to care even more than you did before.
Well, what are some ways? Maybe if this did spark someone's interest, like how do you do that now? It's tough to, there's a lot of different ways you could do it, right? I mean,
well, I would say, it's simple. You got a lot of free resources. Everybody has Teams or Slack. You also have video options in terms of Zoom. So, if anything, hey, do like a weekly, and this was an idea that was presented when I was back in Informatica, is there was a team that would do like a weekly coffee break or weekly yoga. Just do that. That, because honestly, when people were in the office, like some people would do that stuff, some people wouldn't. But if you do it now, it's like, everyone's been trapped. There's different restrictions each state has. Unfortunately, Texas doesn't have them, but that's neither here nor there. But you could do stuff like that. Or if there's different, channels you can create in the messaging platforms I mentioned, and just say, hey, how's it going? Just asking them how's it going outside of work. And, don't start with, hey, how's this project going? And then, okay, hey, how's your weekend? Like, just keep that away. Keep that away, see how they're going, or encourage them to share photos and videos of what they're doing, over the weekend. We have some people doing that in EMEA. They decide to do a whole running contest, and then they're showcasing these photos and videos of places in London and Australia, and it's amazing. It takes you away from talking about numbers and different products. It's a small thing. It's free, and I think it does a whole lot for your culture and your morale as a team.
I think people can see effort, right? So as long as you're putting some kind of effort, like it's like if someone were to ask you, like, how do you make your significant other happy? It's like, well, I don't know. There's a million things you could do, but the effort goes a long way, and a commitment to sustained effort goes a long way, right? So I think, it sounds like what you're kind of saying is like, there's an example, but really it's just care, just try,
Yeah.
And, maybe some groups will break off and start this thing, or some groups will break off and start this thing, but just like caring and putting the effort into rolling something out, anything out, is better than nothing, which is probably what most people are doing, right? So
I agree.
Cool. Well, Alex, I super appreciate you coming on, man. This was a lot of great stuff. I know you've got some big stuff coming up, so I want to make sure we hit those things before you go, though. So tell us what you got coming up.
We've got, so I sit on the marketing committee of the Talent Brand Alliance. We have our first virtual summit of 2021 happening on April 20th through the 22nd. So you should see some content ads coming out for that, ways to sign up. And if you need more details on that, feel free to ping me on side. But outside of that, look for some more articles from me on my LinkedIn or Twitter, as well as content from the Employer Brandwagon, which is a group I work with out of Sydney, Australia.
Toss out your handles and stuff for Twitter, at least, since this will be on LinkedIn, so you'll have to link out.
Definitely. So it's Alex Her7, ALEXHAWJ 7.
Perfect, man. And one last thing, just how do we, or what can we expect at the summit? It's a couple days, it sounds like, so you must have some big stuff going on.
Don't expect your typical virtual webinar. If you're looking to attend, not have your video on, mute yourself, you're missing out on an amazing opportunity. I would say if you do attend, you're going to walk away with, connecting with a few folks to learn more about them on a personal level as friends. And you can learn a whole lot more about employer branding, new techniques, and your employer is going to thank you for attending. It'll be the best investment possible.
All right, there you go, guys. So sign up for that. I'll put a link somewhere so you guys don't have to remember what he just said. So I'll link to that for everyone so they can get signed up. If you're watching this after it already happened, sorry, you should have been here earlier. But thanks again, Alex, for coming on. This was great. I think we got to a lot of good stuff. And hopefully we can do it again in the future. And you can report to us on some of these rollouts you're doing at Acoustic and give us some updates.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Cool, man. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks. Cheers.